The following is a paid commercial program. Unless otherwise identified, the guests on the program are employees of or otherwise represent the advertiser. The opinions expressed therein are those of the advertiser and do not necessarily reflect the views and policies of Global News Radio 640 Toronto.
Hey, good morning and welcome to Your Life, Your Money right here on Global News Radio 640 Toronto. I'm Chris Creston, joined as always by Kelvin, the money guy, and we're wishing you a very happy Sunday morning. Thank you so much for making of it. If you've never listened to the show, this is a show where we talk about your life and your money. That's the name of the show, and we really just break down topics that are happening in the finance world and make them simple. Kelvin makes it simple to understand because when it comes down to it, he's not worried about, the numbers and trying to sound like he's smarter than you. He's trying to break it down so that you can understand it. That's the way he works for his clients, and that's the way he works for his listeners as well. You can visit his website, askkelvin.ca. That's askkelvin.ca. And right there on the website, you can book a call with him. You can set up a call with him right there. Click on the link and book a time and a date that works for you. And bang, you've got a 30-minute call with Kelvin. So that's the thing. Because a lot of the stuff that we talk about delves into some of the more personal ends of your finances and the more personal ends of your life and your goals and your aspirations. And you might want to have a one-on-one with him. But if you do have a question that you want to ask him live on the air, it makes a lot of sense because, you know what, if you've got a question, other listeners out there may have a question as well. So that number to call us live on the air is 416-870-6400. That's 416-870-6400, the same number that you call all week long to get through to all the great shows that we have here at 640 Toronto. And, without further ado, let's bring Kelvin on the show. Kelvin, how you doing today?
Hey, Chris. Good morning. How are you? How you keeping?
Good. Before we started the show, Kelvin, we were just chatting a little bit about the weather. It's getting colder. What do you do when you run into someone you haven't seen in a week? You talk to them about the weather. We're getting this colder weather. I got my first dusting of snow last week or some point, I can't remember, in the York region area. And moving into a house for the first time, I'm finding myself, condo guy, unsure of what I need, unsure of what I have, and completely unsure of what I don't have. And I was saying to you, Kelvin, you don't know what you don't know, right? You don't know what you don't have until you need it. And when I first moved into a condo, the thing that I didn't know I needed was a can opener. Dumb, simple thing, but I was a 20-something guy who didn't realize, oh yeah, how am I going to get these beans? I can't just throw the can, there's got to be a way to do it. So snow shovels, things like that are the things that I'm learning about now. But for people's retirement, there's all sorts of things. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you don't have. So you may have your Rsps all set up. You may have a retirement plan set up through your work, but you don't know about the other products that are out there unless you have someone on your side who can help you talk about it. Commercials are going to throw out acronyms at you, but when you have someone like yourself, a financial advisor, one of the top in the country, hanging out with you, chatting with you about your needs and wants, they can fire back at you and say, well, you know what I think you need? You might need a TFSA. And that's what we're going to talk about here today is the TFSA, the tax-free savings account.
Well, it's funny because many people underuse TFSAs as a retirement tool, like planning tool, right? It's funny. Many people identify RSPs as a key component for successful retirement, but many of them overlook or not aware that a TFSA could play a complementary role when you're planning out your retirement. And really, when you think about TFSAs and RSPs, they're pretty much the opposite. We all know about RSPs. It's been around for like 62 years. The TFSA has only been around since 2009. So many people don't really think about it. It's funny, I run into people that come to see me from these shows, and they have all this money sitting in the bank. And the bank never says to them, why don't you just open up a TFSA and put the money in there? Because any growth is not taxable. And so people really just don't know. And that's why I thought, let's maybe, come into the end of the year, next next 2 months, we're going to be bombarded with RSPs, buy RSPs, borrow for your RSPs, all this kind of stuff. And maybe you want to have a different thought process going into this, buying RSPs and stuff. Maybe you want to take a look at the TFSA and use that instead. I don't know. So the role of an RSP and a TFSA in retirement, can really be different, right? Depending on your circumstances. So you really need to, like I always say, you really need to sit out and plan out what you want out of your money, not only today, but into retirement as you go there, right? And when you look at RSPs versus TFSAs, it's really funny how there's the people that buy it, the age group of people that buy RSPs and TFSAs is quite different. So when I was looking into this, the biggest RSP holders are men and older people. They tend to load up on RSPs because I guess that's how they grew up, right? Of all the TFSA holders in Canada, 1/3 is under 40. And I guess that's going to be, in the future, that's going to be their RSP, right? 42% of people that buy TFSAs are between 40 and 65. And only 25% of TFSA holders are over 65. So what does that tell us, you think, Chris?
Well, I think that probably tells us that, you can't teach old dogs new tricks. But also maybe that, no, nothing to insult the listeners over 65 in the audience, but that, you've grown up with something, it's been around for your entire life. That's
Right.
been the way that you save for retirement while you were working, right?
Right.
So if RSPs, were the retirement tool for the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, then that's where you're going to have all your money. The people who are, a little bit younger have had the opportunity of having a TFSA, and they're looking at it and they're seeing that it's a better option for them, and they're making that change, and they're saying, or not even a change, they're making that course adjustment from what their parents were buying, and they're
Right.
going into the TFSA. So that means that there's probably an advantage to having a TFSA, given not just, hey, it's not just new, it's not just the new kid on the block, it's also got some really important tax advantages.
Now, it could also be that, when you're younger, your income is not that big. So your taxable is not that
True.
huge. So as you age and your income becomes bigger, maybe you want to, maybe your taxes are so high that you have to buy the RSP. So I think when you're thinking about RSPs, people that maximize their RSPs typically go and buy TFSAs. Maybe you want to go forward. Maybe you want to do half. Maybe you want to buy some RSPs and pay a little bit of tax and take the rest of the money and put it into a TFSA where you don't pay the tax and manage it properly. So on one hand, you're paying, on the other hand, you're getting back. So over time, you're actually winning the tax game. I guess when you think about RSPs, it's, when you look at what's happening today in the world with electric cars and so on, maybe the RSP is like the gas engine and the TFSA is like the EV. I don't know. Right? So
Well, that's
I
it.
think
Is the
we really,
TFSA the future? It may be your future. And if you're looking at your finances and according to those numbers, you find yourself in that age bracket, you're a younger investor, you're finding yourself in that position. And maybe that's something worth looking at if you're approaching retirement yourself as well. Because if you're, in your 60s or approaching that, then maybe give a TFSA a second look.
and one of the things, not to beat up on RSPs, they're a really good tool for tax planning, for retirement planning, when done properly. But sometimes, when we look at the opposite end, now we're 70 years old, and we're ready to start withdrawing our RSPs when you have to do it when you're 71. Well, the problem might arise that it might affect because RSP withdrawals are taxable like income. So it might affect your old age. It might affect your your GIS if you qualify for that. So you really have to do some strategic thinking about, if you're 50, fast forward your life, 20 years from now, and what is that going to look like? Where are all my sources of income coming from? So if I know if I know I have a pension plan, like a great pension plan at work, I know I'm going to get CPP in old age, maybe I don't want to load up on my RSPs because that's what's going to maybe throw me over the tax bracket where I don't qualify for old age. So those things we never really had to think about too much. And we know taxes are probably going to go up in the future. So maybe you want to have, like, again, I have a second look at how you're doing it. For people, in their, I would say in their 60s or actually late 50s and their 60s, maybe decumulation of RSPs instead of accumulation is the key for them. I don't know. So you really have to sit down and individually yourself and say, where am I? What am I going to be in 10 years from now? What will my money life look like? And make adjustments today to benefit from a lot of the things in the future. So I guess it's just sitting down with your advisor and doing some strategic planning, before you get into that RSP season, as soon as Christmas is over and into the new year, like I say, we're going to be bombarded with, buy RSPs, borrow for your RSPs, that kind of stuff. So maybe after the break, we can go into maybe a little bit more about, the limits and so on for TFSAs and RSPs.
Yeah, chatting about TFSAs with Kelvin, the money guy, and RRSPs. And if you don't have a financial advisor, great to turn up the radio and listen to this one, because you're going to hear a lot of stuff here that you're not getting because you don't have a financial advisor. If you do have a financial advisor and they're not talking to you about TFSAs and RSPs and the difference, I think that it's worth tuning in here as well, just to get the education. That's part of the job of the financial advisor, right, Kelvin? Is to educate your clients so that they can make wise decisions. It's not just taking the wheel and saying, "Don't worry, I got
Right.
this." There's, you want to make sure that your clients know exactly what's going on, and you can always check in with Kelvin by visiting his website, askkelvin.ca. That's askkelvin.ca. And a whole lot of your life, your money, continuing here with Kelvin, the money guy, on Global News Radio 640 Toronto.
You are listening to a paid commercial program. Unless otherwise identified, the guests on the program are employees of or otherwise represent the advertiser. The opinions expressed therein are those of the advertiser and do not necessarily reflect the views and policies of Global News Radio 640 Toronto.
And welcome back to Your Life, Your Money, right here on Global News Radio 640 Toronto with Kelvin, the money guy. I'm not Kelvin, the money guy. I'm just Chris Creston. I'm a guy with a microphone, but I'm happy to be sitting here with Kelvin and with you here on the Sunday morning. And you always visit his website, askkelvin.ca. That's askkelvin.ca. And you can book an appointment there where you can chat with Kelvin about what we're talking about here today or about anything else in your money life. That's askkelvin.ca. I do have someone patiently waiting on hold, so we'll get to them in just a minute, Kelvin. But one of the things that I was thinking about the TFSA, RSP, you were talking about, well, we're going to be bombarded with ads. It's like, It makes sense for financial institutions to hit you with ads about RSPs because it's like a good movie. There's a ticking clock. There's a cliffhanger. There's all kinds of like built-in little things. There's a deadline. It's built in so perfectly to be easily marketed. TFSAs are not that. We'll get into it in a minute after we take this call. Even the name of a TFSA makes it hard to market because it makes it very confusing. We'll get to that stuff in just a minute, but I do want to get to Jag in Brampton, who's been waiting on hold. How you doing, Jag? Thanks for calling.
Good. Hey, Chris. Hey, Kelvin. Good morning, guys.
Morning.
How are you?
Good. How's everything?
Great. What's your question for Kelvin?
Thank you for taking my call. Sorry, very quickly. So I'm getting into investing. Opened up an investment account through my bank. So quick question, should I be investing through my TFSA account just in case if let's say I doubled up the money or there's, from capital gain perspective, should I put the money into my TFSA first or the money that I have in my TFSA and start investing through that account? Or should I be investing directly? I'm mainly talking stocks and whatnot. And the other question is, I wanted to know Kelvin's opinion on crypto. where he stands? And I know it's very volatile, but I just wanted to hear his opinion on that.
So, Jack, thanks for the question. Yeah, I mean, if you got room in your TFSA, depending on your income, I guess, maybe, yeah, load up on the TFSA. Anything you make in there is tax-free, especially if you invest in stocks. You could, depending on how you pick, you could do very well. So, yeah, I would do that. And make sure you look at your room in your TFSA. The room for your TFSA is 75,500 today if you haven't put any in, and then 6,000
Yeah.
every year. So make sure you're aware of that, because that's a big problem with people in TFSAs. They treat it like a savings account, which is
Right.
really not, right? Crypto, I really don't have an opinion on that, man. I read all these things about it. One thing I can tell you is
Yeah.
the mutual fund companies, the big mutual fund companies, are now getting into some of these crypto things. So maybe that's a sign that maybe it's something to do. For me and my personal opinion, I can't really tell you. Maybe next year I might have one in one of these shows, but I can't really say anything now about it, to be honest
No
with
problem.
you.
Thank you so much for taking my call. Thank you.
All right. Have a nice day.
Thank you so much for calling, Jag. Really appreciate the question. I think that that's important. He brings up an important point when it comes to TFSAs. It's like a lot of people don't even know, what am I loading up my investments in there? And that's one of the things, the mistakes I made 2009. I found out, oh, there's TFSAs. What am I? I'll put my savings money into a TFSA. Well,
Right.
that wasn't right, because you've got to make sure it's in a mutual fund or it's in something that's going to actually grow.
Well, there's the problem with the TFSAs. Like you said, it's the name. It should be an investment account, not a savings account, because people really mistook it for that. And what happens is, if you put your money in today and you take some out tomorrow, you can't put the money back in till the beginning of next year. So there's certain rules that we don't know. I think we don't understand the TFSA. So the TFSA could be a big could be a big useful tool for a windfall. Say you got some inheritance money, maybe you sold a house, which a lot of people have been doing over the last, I would say, couple of years. So contribute into your TFSA. And one other thing I find, Chris, with TFSAs is when I meet people from these shows that come to see me, many of them have their TFSAs in GICs. I mean, a GIC is paying you maybe 1 or 2%. So what are you really saving? Inflation now is 4%, which we're going to have to deal with in the future. So you really need to use the TFSA as a real investment account and put your money in there and let it grow. So say, for example, you're 50 years old, right? And you go and you top up your TFSA if you haven't put any in, your 75,500. And then every year you add your 6,000, right? If you earn a 5% return on that money over 15 years, when you hit 65, that's going to be, $293,000. If you use a financial advisor, you typically earn about a 3% return higher. So you earn an 8% return over those same 15 years, you're going to end up with $415,000. So people should really start thinking about this, thinking about maybe topping up my TFSA. People that are older and have, that, like I say, a typical 65-year-old, only 25% of them use TFSA. So maybe they have a lot of room. Maybe start taking some money out of your Rsp and put into TFSA. I mean, there's withdrawal rules. So when you take money out of your, out of your Rsp, there's withholding tax and so on. So you need to identify that, make sure it doesn't bring you to the next income level. So it's not easy like what I'm saying, but you need to sit down with your advisor and say, is it something I should be doing? Should I, coming to the end of the year, should I take out some money from my Rsps if I have a lot, pay a little bit of the tax, and put the money into my TFSA? And then next year, January 1st, which is a few weeks from now you got another 6,000 you can put in, assuming that you've matched your room. So I think we really need to be strategic about that, and don't just take it for granted that I'm just going to buy Rsps or buy TFSAs or whatever. You need to sit and and think about it. So typically when you got a big
Think
income,
about the how and the why and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt you, Kelvin. I do want,
that's
before we
okay.
take another break, to get to another caller who's waiting on hold.
Sure.
Jack in Uxbridge is calling. And Jack, what's your question for Kelvin?
Hi, good morning. I'm calling for my daughter. She's
Morning.
15 years old, and I have her listen to your show each week, and she says, Dad, what can I do to start a TFSA? I said, you're too young, but is there anything that you can do to help encourage the young ones start ahead of time?
Yeah, Jack, I say what they do is they take, I don't know, $25 a month, $50 a month, whatever it may be, it doesn't really matter, and just set up an investment account, right? Um, and every week let the money go in there and don't worry about it. And after 6 months to a year, let them have a look. The thing is, we need to teach young people about compound interest and how it works and how the stock markets go up and down. But once they realize that, then they can get into things like, how does money double? What happens? It's not easy. It's not magic. There's certain rules you need to follow. So I think for young people and for parents that have, kids, take the baby bonus if you get it and put it away. Or maybe take half of it, actually. Spend half and save half. So you get to enjoy your money, but you get to save for the future. So maybe have them put it into things like just a regular investment account. Don't buy GICs and so on. Maybe put it into something that's very volatile so they can see the ups and downs and what happens. That's my advice to what I would do if I had, my kids are older, but that's what I did for them.
So an investment account, that's not just like a bank account? Is that investing in mutual funds? Is that
Yeah, I would say just buy a good mutual fund and maybe take a little bit of risk, if
yeah, yeah.
so that they can see how the markets go up and down and they can get that feeling when it goes down, not only when it goes up. Because if you can get that out of your system now, man, I tell you, you'll really accomplish a lot as they get older. Not always the good. They want to see that the bad happens also, and when things balance out, you get ahead of the game. So good idea, great idea, Jack. New Year coming, start doing something like that.
Okay, thank
All right, have a nice day.
Thank you so much for calling, Jack. I think that's a great question. Starting off kids young and understanding finances and stuff. Now, one of the things that, my parents had me do was open up an Rsp early on when I started working and stuff. And, I got to see some ups and downs and things like
Right.
that. But, when you do sort of look at risk appetite in a person, younger people are probably more likely to take risks anyway. And as you have more road ahead, you've got a little bit more room to make up for it and stuff like that. And I like what you were saying about making sure that you kind of get that out of their system a little bit so they can see the good and the bad in their finances at an early age.
Yeah, because as we get older, you probably hear this also. We only hear about how much money we made in the markets. We don't hear about how much money we lost. So we need to know those kind of things, what's happening. There's for every seller, there's a buyer. For every buyer, there's a seller.
Mm-hmm.
So if you put money in consistently, especially for young people, every month, every 2 weeks, whatever the case may be, you're dollar cost averaging money into the market. So if the markets go up and down, when it goes up, you're buying less units. When it go down, you're buying more units. So over time, it balances itself. So for young people, I would say take $50 or something and start putting it away and just watch your money go up and down. And over time, you'll do well. So maybe after the break, we'll get into some withdrawal rules for Rsps and TFSAs.
Great. That's always something that I think I struggle with remembering is what are the rules on a TFSA? Is it like a revolving door where I can take my money in and out and in and out? Probably not. Very few things are. But we'll get the answers to that on the other side of the break with Kelvin, the Money Guy. Don't forget, you can visit his website, askkelvin.ca. That's askkelvin.ca. You can book an appointment with him there. You can listen to past shows. There's all kinds of other interesting stuff there. Even if you just want to take a look at the guy and see what he looks like, askkelvin.ca. That's askkelvin.ca. a whole lot more of Your Life, Your Money continuing here on Global News Radio 640 Toronto.
You are listening to a paid commercial program. Unless otherwise identified, the guests on the program are employees of or otherwise represent the advertiser. The opinions expressed therein are those of the advertiser and do not necessarily reflect the views and policies of Global News Radio 640 Toronto.
And welcome back. Thank you so much for making us part of your Sunday. I'm Chris Creston, joined as always by Kelvin, the money guy. Who's he? He's one of the top financial advisors in the country, and he is the host of Your Life, Your Money, right here on Global News Radio 640 Toronto. Don't forget to visit his website, askkelvin.ca. That's askkelvin.ca, because so often when we're wondering something, we're thinking about a question, we ask Google, but hey, Ask Kelvin. Sometimes we ask Jeeves. Remember Ask Jeeves?
Yeah.
That was my favorite search engine. It came with a cool butler. What happened to that guy? Now I got to Google Ask Jeeves to find out if Ask Jeeves still exists.
It's still around. Yeah.
Save the time and just ask Kelvin. Kelvin, we've been talking about TFSAs and RRSPs. Lo and behold, Anthony from Scarborough has a question about the withdrawal rules for your TFSA. Anthony, thank you so much for calling.
Kelvin, I hope that you guys are doing well.
Yes, thank you.
My question is, in regards to RRSPs that I know that we have now, if we are taking those RRSPs out, we will then have to pay the withdrawal tax. And if it moves us up into a larger income category, we'd have to be looking at taxes in that way. If we're investing in through the TFSAs, when it's time for withdrawal, are there any taxable concerns that individuals would have to be worried about, or any surprises at the end of the road from a tax standpoint attached to TFSA?
Yeah, good question, Anthony. It's funny how many people don't know these rules about TFSA. So you're absolutely right. Any money out of the RSP is subject to withholding tax. And there's 10%, 20%, 30% withholding tax depending on how much you take out. The TFSA, there is none. There's no taxes. There's nothing hidden behind the scenes. It's truly what they say. It's a tax-free savings account. So most people that have used up their room in their RSPs should pretty much load up on TFSAs, because it's the only tax-saving thing that the government has given us. It's unbelievable, and we underuse it. So yeah, you're right. Any money out of there, the RSP, is taxable. Any money out of your TFSA is absolutely zero tax.
Thank you so much for that answer. Have a great day.
You too. Take care. Thanks for listening.
And thanks for the call, Anthony. Yeah, that's a great question, because I think a lot of us aren't even really sure. I was joking with you in the break that I like to imagine sort of the boardroom where decisions are made. And when the government decided, TFSAs, great idea. Someone came up with a really great idea. Then it probably went and they brainstormed on a chalkboard or a whiteboard or something on what should we call this new investment account? Well, somehow it got watered down and boiled down and committed up to be called a tax-free savings account. And it's almost like what would I name something if I didn't want people to use it?
Yeah.
If I didn't want people to take advantage of it? I'd call it something that it's not. I can't believe it, because it confuses the general public so much to not know what it is. It gives us a great opportunity to chat with people and explain to them this sort of underused tool for their retirement. But for the most part, we're all sort of sitting there thinking, well, this is a savings account. This is a piggy bank. Well, you don't want to put your money in a piggy bank, especially in a high inflation situation where your money is going to lose value when it's sitting there.
And it's, when the TFSA first came out, I don't know if you remember, but a lot of people got penalized because they thought it was a savings account and go in and out, in and out. Now the government gave us like a one-time oops, and it was okay, but people still don't understand. So withdrawal, like I say, is, from RSPs are taxable, from TFSAs are not taxable. So when you withdraw some amounts from your RSP, the contribution room is lost for the amounts you withdraw, subject to some certain exceptions, right? TFSAs, on the other hand, whatever you withdraw, you can add that money back to your contribution room for the following year, which is a powerful thing. So for example, say you take out, I don't know, 20 grand from your RSP and you had a windfall, you had money lying around, you can now January 1st put in your 26,000 into your TFSA. So we really have to sit and think about that, for example. So withdrawing from your RSPs and withdrawing from your TFSAs, there's tax implications with the RSP, but none with the TFSA. So, think, and with TFSAs, there's no mandated withdrawal at any age, unlike an RSP.
So you don't have to riff it out or whatever.
No. Think about this. Think about someone that's born in, say, 1950, right? So they'll turn 71 this year. And they have to convert the RSP into a RIF. So let's say someone was very diligent about buying RSPs, over all these years when they started working, and it grew to $1 million, right? Which is over growth and time and so on and so forth. So come December 31st, right? Next few weeks, they have to start, beginning in 22, they have to take out 5%, 5.2% of the RIF, which is about $52,000. And you have to declare that as income. So, and the percentage increases every year till you're 95. So it might put you in another tax bracket. You're forced to take the money out. If you accumulate your money in a TFSA, assuming it was around in 1950, and you had the $1 million in there, you can take out the 52,000 and there's no tax. So, if we fast forward our lives in 20 years from now, the 40-year-old guy that's buying the TFSA down the road will be in a better position than the 70-year-old guy person today, I should say. So really think about these rooms in your RSP and your TFSA. Like I say, the TFSA is an underused retirement planning tool. Most people don't think about it. They think about it by mistake or an oops, So you really need to incorporate that, sit down with your advisor, and really think about it, I know Christmas is coming up, and the last thing on our mind is RSPs and TFSAs. But like we said, going into New Year, we're going to be bombarded with stuff, right? So we really need to sit and think. So, what else can I say? We can maybe go into some other things after the break about a question I get is, can you buy a spousal TFSA? So maybe we'll tackle some of those kind of things.
Interesting. Terrific. I'm curious to hear the answer to that question on the other side of the break here on Global News Radio. Don't forget, you can visit Kelvin's website, askkelvin.ca. That's askkelvin.ca. Go to that website, you click on the link, and you're able to actually book an appointment with Kelvin. You pick the time and the date, and then you get a call from Kelvin, and you get to have a chat about TFSAs, RSPs, GICs, any of these things. Anything to do with your money life, any savings, any investments, any of that stuff, give Kelvin a call, and he's happy to chat with you about the particulars and the specifics about what's going on in your life and your money. Hey, that's the name of the show. You're listening to Your Life, Your Money, and it's continuing here on Global News Radio, 640 Toronto.
You are listening to a paid commercial program. Unless otherwise identified, the guests on the program are employees of or otherwise represent the advertiser. The opinions expressed therein are those of the advertiser and do not necessarily reflect the views and policies of Global News Radio 640 Toronto.
Today we're talking about your retirement savings plans, and whenever you were listening to when you were in high school, it might change the way that you invested in your retirement. Maybe you were investing in RSPs because you were busy spinning Beatles 45s when you were in high school. But if you were downloading MP3s, possibly illegally, I'm sorry, maybe getting viruses on your computer as a result of it, I'm sorry, Mom. You may have been investing more in your TFSAs, and there is a real generational divide, and that's something that we've been talking about here with Kelvin, the money guy. Don't forget, you can visit his website, askkelvin.ca. That's askkelvin.ca. Now, Kelvin, we've been chatting about TFSAs, how it's an underused retirement tool. And, one of the things that we were chatting about, I know you're going to get into a question about spousal TFSAs in just a minute, but I think one of the big things that we have to reiterate is the withdrawal rules and the differences between RSPs and TFSAs.
Mm-hmm. Many people think when they take money out of an RSP, when they turn it into a RIF, there is no tax, but that's when the problem starts. So when you're thinking forward, a key benefit for those who have a TFSA at retirement is that there's no mandated withdrawal at any age, where RSPs have to be turned into a RIF when you're 71 and start taking the money out. So a TFSA has no minimums or scheduled withdrawal obligations ever. In addition, any voluntary withdrawals that take place will be added onto your contribution room for the following year. So you can continue to make TFSA contributions at any time, whereas an RSP, you can no longer make contributions after the RSP is converted to a RIF. So really important for people to kind of acknowledge that. Many times we think about putting money in, but we really seldomly think about what's the implications for taking money out. So I think that's an important thing for us to think about.
Yeah, well, it's the way that we think about it. If we're just thinking about putting money in and not thinking about putting money out, we're like a dog burying bones in the backyard. We have no plan on ever withdrawing it. We can't find them later on. So
Right.
when it comes down to it, it's very important to make sure that you're going to be getting back more on the back end of your investment. That's why you're doing it. You're not just
Right.
doing it to placate, your financial advisor or your spouse or your fears of doing nothing. In the end, you want to have a happy retirement, you want to have a successful retirement, and you want to have a comfortable retirement. And that's why we're talking about using TFSAs as a retirement tool. And Kelvin, before the break, you did tease about spousal TFSAs. Is that a thing?
No. People think you can set up a spousal RSP where you own it, your spouse owns it if you have a higher income and you're the contributor. A TFSA is set up individual. Your SIN number, you're over your 18, blah, blah. So it's you. It's not no spousal thing. So people shouldn't worry about that. RSPs, matures, right? People don't realize that it matures when you're 71. Now you can mature it before you turn 71, but when you turn 71, it's done. Whereas the RSP, there is no maturity date. It can go on forever. And one thing about TFSAs is when you make your beneficiary, you should make your beneficiary a continuing annuity, which is another topic to get into. And I mean, so that's one thing we should look at in our TFSAs is who's the beneficiary. Don't directly beneficiary to someone. Make it a contingent beneficiary.
And I think that's an important thing to think about, Kelvin, is that when you have a financial advisor on your side, they can think about this. You've got a team of people, Kelvin, that can help, and we've had them on the show where they can explain to you about how to use the beneficiary, who you're going to leave this to in the end, and who gets to benefit from it and who gets to hold on to it. Where just for yourself. Like I said before about, preparing for my first winter in a house, you don't know what you don't know. Do I need a shovel? Do I need salt? What don't I know that I absolutely need? We do have another caller on the air that I want to get to before we take the break, and it's Kathy in Peterborough. Kathy, thanks so much for giving us a ring.
Good morning.
Morning.
How are you today?
Hey, what's your question for Kelvin?
All right. My advisor was my sister. She passed away 4 years ago. I currently have an advisor that I don't have a lot of communication with because I don't, to be honest, trust him, know him. So we have a significant amount of funds, and it's been sitting invested. And now my husband is 70. I'm 67, and I'm wanting to take it out and put a lot of it in TFSAs, and I need to figure out how to manage that. But I'm wondering about fees to take it out away from him. Like,
I wouldn't know unless I see your statements, or call me tomorrow. If
Okay.
your husband's turning 71 this year.
Yes. There is some money in a lira.
Okay.
There are.
There's a lot of things, little unique things you can do before the end of the year, So I would
Well,
suggest, and it's a complicated question to answer on the air. So give me a ring, or I can call you during the week or Monday,
sure.
and kind of have a chat about what fees you'll pay and things like that.
Perfect. Because he's actually wanting us to turn a lot of our funds over to dynamic funds. And I'm thinking, okay, so if we turn a lot of our funds over to dynamic funds, I'm thinking there's fees associated with that change as well. And if there's fees associated with that change, do I want to make that change and then turn it into TFSAs? Sure, we'll talk tomorrow.
Yeah, Kathy, yes. We're coming to the end of the hour, and let's chat tomorrow. Okay?
Okay.
All right. You have a nice day. Take care.
All right. 11 o'clock works for me.
All right. Call you then.
Hey, perfect. Thanks, Kathy. You know what? And Kathy, I'll make sure that you left your number with our producer off the air as well. I appreciate it. And if anyone needs to get a hold of Kelvin and set up a time and a date, like Kathy at 11 o'clock, you go to askkelvin.ca and you can book appointment right there and then. You know that he's booked at Monday at 11 o'clock, so don't even try. But if there's another time where you might be able to get a hold of Kelvin, you can book him an appointment right there. Kelvin, like you said, we're up at the end of the hour here. So any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
Well, I say do some thinking. Actually, people, go enjoy your Sunday and have fun, and call me one of these days and listen to some of the shows. But yeah, go enjoy your day and take care.
Terrific. Awesome. Enjoy your Sunday, everyone out there. And don't forget to visit Kelvin's website, askkelvin.ca. Stay tuned to Global News Radio, 640 Toronto.
The preceding was a paid commercial program. Unless otherwise identified, the guests on the program are employees of or otherwise represent the advertiser. The opinions expressed therein are those of the advertiser and do not necessarily reflect the views and policies of Global News Radio 640 Toronto.